Hi, my name is Susan, and I have finally decided to share my Sasquatch experience that I had in Big Bear Lake back in 1989. I lived there from 1988 to 1990, and I worked at the Bear Valley Justice Court there as a court clerk. That has since been shut down, but at the time, it was a courthouse, and I did work there. I used to live on Crystal Lake Road. I moved there in 1988 as a single mother with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. One night, it was late May, early June, and I decided to go for a walk to go get my mail from the mail stop box. I brought my metal bat, just in case, and my flashlight. So I set out of my home at about 8:45 at night after I put my kids to bed at 8 o'clock. I waited for them to fall asleep to make sure that they didn't know that I left the house. I didn't want to scare them. I didn't want them to know that I had stepped out. So I proceed to go to the mailbox. Now, that mail stop box, which is a cluster of mailboxes that they had there, still do, I guess, still have in Big Bear Lake. You walk there because there is no individual delivery. So you have to go to these cluster boxes to go get your mail. So about 8:45, the moon is mostly full, so I can see somewhat. Otherwise, it's pretty dark. There's no street lights at all. And other than some house lights that might be on, you really can't see much, but the moon did provide some light. Now, at the time, in 1989, when I lived there, most of that street on Crystal Lake Road had not been built on yet. There were a scattering of some houses, but it was not a fully built-up neighborhood at that time. So what you saw was a lot of lots that hadn't been cleared yet for building. They were, flat, but a lot of brush, a lot of trees. So I step out of my home and I proceed to walk. About a minute into my walk, I start to smell this skunk smell, really bad. And it kind of bothered me because I thought, the whole reason I'm going to the mailbox is I like the smell at night, especially in late spring like that. So I keep going, and the smell gets stronger. I take my flashlight, and I'm, sort of scanning the area a little bit on those blank lot areas that have trees and brush. Didn't see a thing. And I'm, doing it low, thinking it's a skunk. I proceed. The smell gets stronger. And then a smell of like rotten eggs or sulfuric, really bad sulfuric smell starts in there, and it gets very, very strong. Then there's also like a wet dog, kind of a funky, gamey smell involved. And at this point, it's grossing me out, and I tend to gag a little bit. I tried to cover my nose because it was so strong. It was in my nostrils, and it was gagging me. There was no wind whatsoever. I could not get rid of that smell out of my face. So I thought, okay, I'm going to just keep going forward. Maybe it'll go away. And I had to plug my nose, and I started to breathe out of my mouth. That was a really bad decision because then it got in my throat, and I ended up swallowing a little bit of it. That was a big mistake to do that. So I started to do this, trying to get the smell on my way. And I take my flashlight, and I start to scan again. And I'm like, something's here. I don't get it. And that skunk smell that it hit at first, I thought, this is too strong for just one skunk. So I'm going back and forth into these lots that are bare, but, have some brush and trees. I see nothing. I keep going, and mostly I was looking on my right because that's where most of the brush was. Well, as I proceed to go forward, I finally look on my left. I see 2 huge eyes. They are the size of tennis balls, and they are very, very bright red. It's the kind of, the glare kind of look you get when you see a dog or a deer or a cat, at night or whatever, and you see that glare. Well, these were 2 big, round, red eyes. I froze, and I thought, well, my God, that's a bear? That's a pretty big bear, and it smells really bad. Now, I was in the street. As I was walking, Big Bear has no sidewalks in the residential neighborhoods. There's no sidewalks. And the width of these roads are enough to let a car pass going in either direction. You cannot park on these roads because there's not enough room for cars to pass. If you do that, they're just not very wide. So I was walking in the street when I looked and saw it, to my left. And it was about 50 feet away. And when I see the eyes and I see how high they are, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a bear. That's a really big bear, but it makes no sense because of how high the eyes are. It was standing next to a tree that was next to a garage of a home that was actually built. And I realized that the eyes are equal with the height of the garage door. And I cannot make sense of this. I look down to the feet area and I'm like, it's got to be standing on something. This makes no sense. There's nothing it's standing on. That lot is flat, which I really did remember being flat, but of course it makes no sense. So I'm trying to figure it out. And the more I look at it, it's looking right at me, and I can tell it's looking right at me, and I'm looking right at him. And I start looking for ears, rounded ears, nothing. The shape of the head was, very big, rounded at the top, no ears. I start looking for a snout, no snout. The face is pretty flat. Those eyes, though, blocked out any kind of a detail I could see in the face. I couldn't really because the eyes were so big, but I did notice that the face was pretty flat. The coloring was a coppery dark brown. And the other thing I noticed, it's not furry. No fur. Long hair everywhere, head to toe. And I also noticed as I'm staring at it that the shoulders are as wide as two of mine. If you were to put my shoulders that width, like that, that's how wide the shoulders were. This creature was extremely tall because of those eyes being level with the top of the garage door. As I start to look and start to try to process what I'm looking at, no one had ever said, oh, by the way, a Sasquatch is a real creature. They're really out there. I had no idea. As I'm looking at it, I never thought Bigfoot ever. The only thing I had ever heard about it at that point in my life, I was 26 years old back then. I was very naive. And the only thing I ever heard about Bigfoot was like maybe in a story, cartoonish kind of thing. Never thought it was real. So because I'm looking at this and trying to process what I'm looking at, I decide in my head that it's a demon. You know why? Because there is a group in Big Bear Lake called the Goatmen. They do worship Satan. There are times, higher level of the town, when you go up into the mountain, they do the pentagram thing and the, sacrifice animal thing up there, which I was told about to be careful of. Don't go too deep into the woods because, these people are out there and they do that. So because of that information, when I first moved there, I thought that this group of Satan worshiping people had created a demon. I had no idea, other than that, what this thing could be, especially because of that smell was so horrible. And I'm looking at this thing that was huge and hairy, no fur, completely hairy from head to toe. As the realization comes to me with my imagination that I'm looking at a demon, from head to toe, I go numb and I wet my pants. I froze. I didn't know what to do. There is nobody else on that road. Nobody. It's about 8:45, 9 o'clock at the latest at night. Everybody's in their homes, the few homes that were there. And I didn't know what to do. In my head, I'm like, okay, you got to unfreeze, you got to walk. If you walk forward and proceed to the mailbox, maybe when you come back, it'll be gone. Because I didn't want to go back home because I was afraid whatever this was, I didn't want it to know where I lived because my kids are in bed. They're in my home. They don't know I left the home. I also start to pray to God in my head and to myself. Dear God, please don't let me disappear. Dear God, please don't let me get killed this way. If it's my time to die, please don't let it be this way. Don't let my kids wake up in the morning and find their mother gone. Please, dear God, don't let my kids see my body mutilated, cut up, whatever, in the street. Nothing. I was so full of guilt at that moment because I had left my kids in the home, not knowing I went out to get the mail at night like that. I didn't know what else to do. The fear was overwhelming. I had to unfreeze myself. I had to keep going. And because I wet my pants out of fear, it was uncomfortable to walk, but I did it. I proceeded to walk to the mailbox. As I walked, and the fear just keeps building and building and building because I don't know if this thing is going to follow me. I also heard nothing. That was the other thing I noticed. Once I saw that creature, I was trying to listen to see if it would make any noises or move, nothing. I noticed also at that time, I heard nothing. No crickets, no birds, no owls, and those were always out making noises. Not a lot, but they were there. And that was the other thing I noticed. Not a sound. So as I was walking to the mailbox, I had to keep listening behind me to see if this thing's going to come up behind me and kill me or drag me away. I didn't know. Your imagination is going to just go crazy when you don't know what you're up against. I finally get to the mailbox, which was about a football field away, maybe a little more. I get to the mailbox, I get my mail, and I go back. I have my bat in my hand because I'm going to have to fight for my life. I didn't know what else to do. I go back to my home, and I'm looking in the road from the moonlight to see if I can see anything in the road. Keep trying to get back home. Thank you, God. When I got to the point where I had seen the Sasquatch, it was gone, or at least it was hiding. I don't know, but I didn't see it anymore. I get home, lock the door, all that. Because of that, because nobody ever told me that Sasquatch existed, I lived in complete terror and fear of that for over 10 years. I didn't sleep anymore because of it. I didn't know if this demon was following me throughout my life. I didn't know if it was going to hurt my kids. My kids were not allowed to go back outside because of that instance until I went and took them to church the following weekend. I needed to get them blessed by a priest. I wanted myself blessed by a priest. Until that time, they were not allowed outside. I told my kids it was because I saw a bear. It was a rough week because Big Bear is beautiful. Late spring is beautiful anytime, but especially late spring. I just couldn't let my kids outside. I went back to that area the following day after work. I found a wad of hair, very long, not as long as mine and not curly. It was straight, very dark coppery red. It was a handful. It was stuck on a piece of wood that was there because he was in a lot, with the brush and the trees. And I found it on the ground because I wanted to think, well, maybe I'm wrong about it being a demon. Maybe there's some sort of explanation that I couldn't see in the dark with just the moonlight. I pick up the hair and I look at it. It's actually very soft. And I wanted to take it and bring it with me because I thought, I'm going to bring this to Fish and Game and Wildlife and have them look at it. Maybe they can identify what kind of animal this is. But I also thought, I'm looking at it going, I don't think so. I don't know of any animal that has long, long hair like this. And there's no way in hell it was a person. This thing was huge, very tall. There's no way. I put it back down because in my mind I thought, well, is this thing marking territory? If I bring it to my home, is it going to smell that? I've got it in my house and it will follow that smell. So I put it back. In hindsight, I wish I had kept it, but understand I was very naive. I was 26. I had no clue what I was up against. No clue. And by the way, this creature, all it did was stare at me. It had a really bad funk to it. Really bad, funky smell. That hit me, before I saw it. But all it did was stare at me. So yeah, I put the hair back. Go back to my home, dinner, the whole thing. So that day passes. The following day after that, I go to work. Again, this is a day and a half after I had the experience. I didn't ask anybody the following day because I still wanted to go to the site where I saw the creature and maybe explain what I saw before I said anything. So I asked the other clerks that I worked with, did they know anything about a really tall, hairy creature? And my friend Jane that I worked with, she proceeds to say that it's a Sasquatch. And I said, what is that? I'd never heard that word before. She says, it's Bigfoot. And I kind of laughed in her face and I said, yeah, come on, right. And she says, oh no. And whenever Jane goes, oh no, she's telling you her truth and she's not lying to you and she's serious. So I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? And she says, yeah. She goes, Sasquatches are real. They're Bigfoots and they are up, in the higher parts above Big Bear. And I really didn't believe her, even though I knew she wasn't lying. I just thought that what she believed was, you know, a little odd. She says, oh no, they know. And I said, well, how come I haven't heard of one? I said, if, these things exist, how come I don't know? And she says, well, here in Big Bear, for one, they don't want to hurt tourism. They don't want people to be afraid to come up with their families and use this ski town with their kids. The second reason, because they don't want the idiots of the world going up there and hunting them. That part I got. So I didn't know what to make of this. And I said, okay, well, have you ever seen one? And she goes, yeah. Now they had, maybe they still do, a really nice home, really nice home at the top of the ski slopes. They have a home by where the skiers would go to catch the top part where you slide down. I'm not a skier, so I may be saying this wrong. But to the top where the skiers will go down and where the snow blowing machines will run to, beginning of the season will blow snow to try to get the slopes going with snow and get a base going, before the real snow starts and get them going. And she says, yeah, one walked by our front window one time. And I was like, okay, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, she probably saw, one of the ski guys. I didn't say anything. I was like, okay. And she said, when the guys go out and start doing the snow blowing machines to start getting the slopes ready, they will always go with more than 2 people because they've had rocks thrown at them. To me, I thought that sounded even weirder because I had never heard of any creature, animal, anything that could throw a rock at a person. And she says, oh yeah, it's a thing. She goes, they're there. And I still asked her, I said, I really think that I would have heard of this if it was true. And she says, people don't talk about it. She goes, there's some people here that know they're here. And they know, just don't really go out by yourself, up high in the mountains by yourself, late at night. And that was kind of it. And at the time, I was kind of embarrassed for her because I thought she was a little weird, believing some sort of a fairy tale thing. So I decided I didn't know if that was the real story or I still saw a demon. I didn't know what to believe. The next day after that, a man from Fish and Game came to drop off tickets. We used to process their tickets for citing people for fishing without a license and things of that nature, things that had to do with fish and wildlife. So when Jane wasn't around, the man that brought the tickets for us to process, I asked him, privately, I said, have you ever heard of a Sasquatch? Do you know anything about that in this area in Big Bear? And he says, oh, no, we don't have that. We have bears sometimes, but that's it. No, we don't. And I was like, okay. So I let it go. Because in my mind, I had decided if someone else confirmed her story, then, I'm wrong. Sasquatch is real. It's a thing. Nobody else confirmed it. I continued to think that what I saw was a demon, lived in complete fear until I moved away from Big Bear the following year. I am now in Colorado, and the fear of this demon followed me for 10 years. I had trouble sleeping, afraid of the dark, all sorts of things, all because nobody admitted that there are Bigfoots / Sasquatch out there in the world. These creatures are real and they exist. I'm doing this video to hopefully educate some people out there to let you know, yes, they are real. 10 years after my experience, I actually read an article in a newspaper about a fire. I believe it was California or Nevada, not quite sure. But a Sasquatch had exited the forest. He was badly burned. There was a forest fire going on. There was plenty of firemen out there, trying to fight this fire. And a Sasquatch walked out, badly burned. And I apparently looked at the humans there, the firefighters, and I guess they had an ambulance there, if need be. And he sat down on some sort of a log, I guess, or fallen tree, something like that, because he's hurt. Well, the firemen didn't know what to make of him, apparently, and were, afraid. But when they saw that he wasn't much of a threat, they approached him, apparently helped him a lot. He was taken away, actually, in an ambulance to some sort of a veterinarian facility. To this day, they don't know what happened to this creature. Nobody seems to be able to track it down. But when I read that article, I knew Jane was telling me the truth all those years ago. my fear of this huge demon disappeared. I just want people out there to know this is a real phenomenon. If you think you've seen something like that, you probably did. If you can eliminate all these other things, that what you're seeing could have been a Sasquatch. Now, I am completely educated. I have researched and studied this phenomenon for over 25 years. I can go into any sort of a forested area, wooded area, and I look around now. I'm not going to let this stop me from living and enjoying the outdoors, especially in Colorado. And I can tell, if what they say a Squatch has been in the area. And no problem, no fear anymore, because now I know what it is. And to the people out there who think that they're doing someone a favor, especially scientists, by going out there and shooting one to prove that they exist for science, they already know. There is so much information out there about these Sasquatches, which, by the way, have so many different names. Indian tribes all have a separate name for them. The most recent one that I have found is called Nantinuk, part of Alaska. Portlock, Alaska calls them Nantinuk. These indigenous tribes are smart enough to teach their kids early on that this is a real creature. You have to be careful. Do not approach them. Stay away from them. Stay out of their area. Things like that. So now call me Sasquatch Susan, because I am highly educated. If someone had told me way back then about these creatures / people, which, by the way, DNA has proven are part human, I wouldn't have lived in that kind of fear for so long about a demon. I want you to think about what that would have been like for you, thinking a demon is following you and or your children for that long of a time and being afraid that something could kill you or your kids. And it was because it was a Sasquatch. These things are there. Personally, I think that every state park should have a sign that states, "Caution, Bigfoot sightings." Proceed with caution. Enjoy the world, especially the outdoors, because there's a lot to see and it's beautiful. But people need to be educated. They need to go out there with a healthy dose of caution. That's it. If you smell something really funky, and I mean bad, you'll notice it. It's extremely gamey, rotten, very skunky, really bad. And it sticks in the back of your throat. It's horrible. And it can gag you. Some people have said that they've thrown up from it. Me, I just gagged really bad. You can have rocks thrown at you. Look down at the ground. See if you see anything, like a big footprint, because there's a lot of them out there that people have cast. Educate yourself. Me, I could go out into the woods right now, unafraid. And in my opinion, I'd be about 80% sure. If I wanted to, I could find them. Because knowing what I know now, I know where to go, what to avoid. Basically, they just want us out of their area. They're protecting their family like we protect ours. And trust me, they're in families. The deeper you go into the woods, the more likely there are some living there. Please don't hurt these creatures. They're not bothering you. You are encroaching on their territory. They just want to be left alone. There's a lot more. If you want to educate yourself, go on the internet. Look, I've seen so much stuff over the period of time, and there's a lot of really good scientists and researchers out there doing a good job. One of them that I listen to a lot, well, not recently, but there's a Dr. Jeff Meldrum. He is a professor out of Idaho State University. He's been studying Sasquatches for over 25 years. Very educated man, very knowledgeable. There's another lady scientist whose name I forget at the moment, but she's on the show Expedition Bigfoot. Very knowledgeable, very smart lady. So I have decided to educate myself too, researched, done a lot of studying on this. And yeah, so if you do that, and you can keep your family safe and at the same time enjoy, the outdoors without being scared, especially like I was, now that I know. Have a good day, and just remember, if you want to look good on the outside, be good on the inside. God bless.